Welcome to this session, Child Protection at the Crossroads, Indigenous Knowledge, Community-Led Approaches, and Cross-Sector Solutions. We are going to discuss two different projects now. One of them presented by Iggy Saviere from Elevate Trust. He is the Programs Director of Environmental Sustainability and Climate Action. And Joao Victor da Cruz, who is the project coordinator of UNAS at the SLAM Heliópolis in São Paulo, Brazil. We will be gathering questions for the end of the session, so please leave your questions in the dedicated Q&A little thing or on the chat, and we will answer them at the end. I will be co-facilitating this session with Elena Giannini, who is also here, the lead of the Learning Working Group. So if you have any question, any comment, you can also send it to her directly. And we will, as I said, address all of your questions at the end on the contents of the presentations. So first, I am going to introduce Iggy Saviere from Elevate Trust Zimbabwe. He's going to share a case study of the organization Sundi Ramambo, sorry if I am pronouncing it incorrectly, in Zimbabwe, specifically on how to integrate indigenous knowledge in a way that it helps address the effects of climate change. So Iggy, I have your presentation now that I am going to share with the audience, but I wanted to know, how does this initiative, the Sunde Ra Mambo, illustrate the role of indigenous knowledge in strengthening child protection and community resilience during climate crisis, which is what you have been researching?
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much, Mara, for the introduction. Yes, so today I'm just going to introduce you to one of our indigenous knowledge systems here in Zimbabwe, something that may be quite new to some groups, but it is something that here we proudly share in Zimbabwe. It is one of our traditional systems that we believe to be effective when it comes to protecting vulnerable communities, and in particular, in this case, children that are orphans and vulnerable children. So yes, I did conduct my research in one of our deep rural areas known as Saviere in Zimbabwe. So I did a case study integrating indigenous knowledge systems in child protection with my organization, Elevate Trust. You can go to the next slide, please.
Sorry, this one.
But anyways, as we are progressing through the slides, just to give you a brief understanding of what the Zunde Ramambo initiative is all about. So this initiative, particularly, it is about, it's a powerful illustration of how indigenous knowledge systems can serve as critical elements for child protection and our community resilience. Particularly during climate-induced crises, especially when you considering the El Nino droughts that has been affecting Zimbabwe currently. So at its core, the Zunera Mambo, which particularly means that the chief's granary, it is a community-managed food security initiative rooted in the African philosophy of Ubuntu, which simply translates to shared responsibility, solidarity, and community dignity. In a way, it has a common saying that says, I am because we are. Essentially means that I exist in a community and a society where I thrive because of other people. So just to further illustrate what the Sundar Mambo is about, so what happens is that each household contributes labor and sometimes resources to a communal field that is often uh, overseen by traditional leadership. These could be chiefs or even kings. So the harvested food is therefore distributed to those that are most vulnerable, particularly orphans, child-aided households, as well as elderly caregivers, especially in times of hardships. If you can move to the next slide, please. Yes, so that is the description of the Sundara Mambo concept. As you can see, at the top is the chief, then there's the community, then the fields where communities work and contribute. And then at the bottom, you see that they are vulnerable, which means that they are vulnerable groups, because essentially the primary purpose of this is to ensure that all vulnerable groups get the assistance they require in order to thrive. So just to further buttress the point and to show you how this functions as social safety net for children. So you realize that in Zimbabwe during droughts, many orphans and vulnerable children, particularly those that are in um, child-aided households, they face hunger. Some even drop out of school, and some even face neglect. But from my research, one thing I realized was that villages that used the Zunde concept were better positioned when it comes to providing consistent food to those vulnerable children, because they were reserves for them, and as well as children were kept in school because they were now able to have access to at least 3 hot meals per day because of the food that has been provided by the communities. And we also realized that it was also important to prevent, harmful coping mechanisms that children or orphans and vulnerable children are often subjected to. For example, you see that, when children are in harmful situations, they often engage in, child labor, even in some cases, even transactional sex, and even early marriages. Um, Even through the interviews, one of the traditional leaders said that we realize that when the Zunde granary is full, we don't fear the drought. We know that our children will not sleep hungry, and just from that, this speaks volume to how community protective function, how it is beyond food relief, but rather, a long-standing system of social protection that is embedded in local norms and their identity. If you can move to the second slide, please. Yes, so just to further show that connection between the Zundera Mambo and child protection, um, so one thing that what we realized was that Zundera Mambo is an adaptive design, as it promotes resilience through local knowledge and practice, because it relies on knowledge of the local soils, even the weather patterns, even seed varieties. Um, there's also the existence of traditional leadership structures that manage land, labor, and storage, as well as the idea that it is a non-monetary economy of care, where it doesn't necessarily require you to provide monetary input for you to get access to services. So one thing you realize that it's does build resilience in particularly two major ways. Number one is that it provides that ecological resilience, where you because in our societies, people collectively plan for their calendars. How to rotate crops, and even how to preserve indigenous crops, and all these buffer, those erratic rainfall and market shocks. It also provided a component for social resilience to, food is not necessarily hoarded or commodified, but rather it is shared based on vulnerability. So you realize that such an ethic protects children by providing that nutritional support, reducing those school dropouts, and even community monitoring for abuse. Because in this instance, each and every individual is responsible for the welfare of each and every child. Therefore, it's not necessarily only about the provision of food assistance, but rather the overall welfare of children. Yeah, of course, during droughts, just to conclude on this point, you realize that during droughts, because our communities and our societies really are dependent on climate, rain-fed agriculture. Because of the changing climatic conditions, this came in as a powerful tool for providing services and nutritional support for these children. So ultimately, what we're saying is that the Zondera Mambo concept is not necessarily just a farming practice. Rather, we should understand it as a child protection system that is there and that represents that ecosystem of care that has been built over generations and becomes, most visible during this crisis. Therefore, by recognizing and resourcing such indigenous knowledge, we not only protect our children more effectively, but really it's an ideal to restore their dignity as well as their child agency, and even that long-term community resilience, especially when they are on the front lines of climate change. So if we are serious about sustainable humanitarian action, we must learn from and not bypass that wisdom that exists from places like Mbira. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Iggy, for your presentation. We received a first question on the chat, so we will leave it for the end, for the Q&A session. Thank you very much for the question from Bushra. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing it properly. Now we will go with Joao from UNAS. UNAS is an organization based in a very large slum in Sao Paulo called Heliopolis. And Joao is the project coordinator of UNAS Heliopolis. So Joao, could you please tell us more so we can learn about the history and the impact of the Children and Adolescent Center of UNAS and the Psychological Support Center, and how it came to be, why did UNAS develop it, and also what UNAS is. And I will show your wonderful presentation too.
Good evening, everyone. The pleasure to be here today. I'm gonna tell the history, not just my history, but the history of the entire territory who refused that being signed by the government. So the history, I want to first context overview, give it the context of Brazil on the eras to you understand how this began and how was born all the this history, so you can put on the The other slide, please. So we started the history context on the 70s. Brazil went through a series of territorial transformations that spanned the country we live in today. Entire families left the rural areas of the north and northwest of Brazil and seeking for the better opportunities in the cities of the south and southwest. So, but when they arrive in those larger urban centers, especially in São Paulo, they are met a hard reality, a lack of housing, unemployment, and social exclusion. So, with no alternative, these families began occupying a vacant lot of vacant piece of land, and that's how the favelas began. That's how Heliopolis was born. Can you put the next, please? So the history of favelas of Heliopolis starts with a removal of about 250 families from the oldest favelas on the city of São Paulo, was moved to temporary shelters with a promise. In 5 years, they would receive a proper housing, but 15 years pass and nothing happened. And in this meantime, more families arrive and the territories grow too much. And Heliopolis become the largest favelas in São Paulo with over 1 million square meters and around 220,000 inhabitants. So in the absence of the state, these residents began organizing themselves, and they formed associations and grassroots groups and building their houses, open the streets, uh, sacred water and electricity, and start to demand their own rights. So in 98, with Heliopolis already more structured, and the government we want this interest of the land, but now they are resistance. So the associations, these all associations union ourselves, and that was UNAS born. So UNAS means Union of Neighborhoods and Associations of Heliopolis and surrounding areas. It's a community-based organization. They believe the grassroots movements most not only pressure for public policies, but they have most helped to create them. So from their belief, we have a major victors. Uh, a major victors were born. One of the most powerful events, who they are going to show you now, is the creation of the Center for Children and Adolescents, the CCAS. So the next slide is for that. Can you put the next slide, please? Okay. So the CCAS the policy of this policy came from everyday community practice. So when the parents went to work, the children were left out without care. Since the public schools in Brazil, it operates on only half days, so they don't have an entire day in the school. So the community associations become welcome the children, and their spaces become a safe and caring environment to the children stay. So this works leads mostly by the women of territory and our mothers, our aunties, our grandmothers, and spread to the many favelas in the city, and the other favelas start to make the same way. So UNAS then built a movement of advocacy with decision makers and strategic partners. That's how the OZEN we are create the first recognized space of community care for the states, and this vision of caring is not enough. So the vision expanded and the people realized that it was necessary to go beyond the safe spaces. It was necessary to ensure the quality of food, full-time education, and citizens formation. So that's how CCRs were created as public policy. The people start to do this on their own, and the state see that and make out new public policies to the CCRs. Um, but and this is what we created CCRs with the to everyday practice who came in your territory. So today the CCR are parts of. Can you pass to the next slide, please? Today they are parts of São Paulo Official Social Assistance Network with 11 units in Heliópolis and neighborhood areas, serving around 1,500 adolescents for 6 to 14 years old per month. So that's our victory. But we have like a more of challenge now. So you can pass to the slides or to the next one. So in the pandemic, we see a case of violence start to grow, and specifically the child sexual violence, increasing drastically, revealing the new gap in the protection system. So the lack of individualization psychological care, it's it's sharing to us on the pandemic. So in response, in 2023, we created NAPSIS, who is the Psychological and Social Support Center. It's the first project in Heliópolis and other areas of São Paulo and the favela areas, offering psychological support for children and teens who are victims of the rights violations, specifically sexual violence. Um, so NAPSIS was born for a local. Can you put the next slide, please? So NAPSIS was born from a local working group who is led by also the women, and with support of from research of USP. USP is the one of the public universities, one of the top public universities in Latin America. So today it provides psychological and social care founded exclusively by a donation for individuals. But our current challenge is transform NAPSIS into a public policy, because we did how just we did in success. Can you pass to the next slide, please? I'm going to choose so fast. uh, so the next goal is making this a public policies. We want to ensure every child who suffered violence was the right to be humanized, continuous, and have a free care. So this journey, who I'm telling to you now, is the journey who to us proves that child protections and all the fights for the rights and public policies can be and should be emergent for the activity listen of the community. So Heliópolis doesn't wait for policies to arrive. Uh, they started doing and making ourselves. And so Heliópolis creates this, Heliópolis cares, and Heliópolis transforms this from the grassroots. So I think that's we want to share. The favela thinks about public policies every day because it's the systems we found here to survive. And these places, specifically the places of for children, the centers of these constructions need to be came from the favelas. So this is the learn of this journey. Unas learn and we want to share it today. So you can share. We have like some contacts and this stuff. This is the lesson we have to from Leopolis, and this is our contact if you want. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joao. And if anyone wants to connect with UNAS, those are the contact details. So Instagram, or if you want to send an email to Joao, that is his email address. And now we want to learn more about how the lessons learned from these initiatives and the challenges that they have faced can bring other lessons for organizations trying to achieve similar outcomes, or local community-based organizations struggling with the same topics as the ones that Iggy and Joao have described before. So Iggy, we wanted to know how can the challenges that Sunde Remambo have faced, and the lessons learned and your practices help other organizations. And I will share the presentation.
All right, thank you very much, Mara. So there are four main key challenges, and the number one challenge are related to. All right, so yes, so one of the biggest challenges when it comes to indigenous knowledge systems is marginalization. So what you realize is that indigenous knowledge systems are often undervalued and sidelined in humanitarian programming. So even in Zimbabwe here, you realize that despite the contribution of the Sundara Mambo as a mechanism to protect children and ensuring food security, it is rarely acknowledged in policy frameworks and humanitarian assessments. So one of the key lessons that I think we need to learn, especially as humanitarian actors, is that we must intentionally recognize, validate, and integrate indigenous practices as complementary, not secondary, to formal systems. So what I mean is we need to shift power and make space for those local voices, especially at decision-making tables. So we can do this by ensuring that we have those participatory mapping tools. We can do community vulnerability assessments, and even just simply traditional leader consultations to understand where they're coming from and how we can integrate such into programming. A simple example that I can give, a personal experience rather, is that my grandmother once came to my house, and so we had a problem because of my yard is big, so we had problem with snakes. So my grandmother she came with this root from the rural area, and she placed it around the house and said that yeah, now you're free from snakes, right? So such tools can be integrated also, not only in policy but also even integrated in science, where we can take such indigenous knowledge and formalize it. We also saw the same lessons even during the COVID-19. In Zimbabwe, we have one of our herbs known as the Zumbani, which was quite effective against the flu symptoms and the COVID. And it became commercialized and was exported to different countries, and it proved to work for the majority of the people who were taking it. So in that line, I think that we really need to effectively and systematically integrate indigenous knowledge systems into our humanitarian action. The challenge number two really is sustainability and scalability. So you realize that often sustainability is challenged by our youth migrating from rural areas and moving from place to place, which then weakens that labor supply and that knowledge transfer to our people. And of course, climate change coming in and undermining the fields, the Zundaramambo fields, as well as the lack of investment, particularly in storage, as well as even in irrigation infrastructure. So I think that as humanitarian actors, we really should go beyond emergency response and try to adopt a resilience building approach in order to support communities to adapt to these traditional systems. For example, we can start to incorporate solar irrigation and drought-resistant crops to enhance that long-term impact, right? So the key idea, therefore, in this case is to co-create, right? To, scaling without necessarily erasing that local identity. So let's complement the already root ideal solution that exists in that particular society and try to scale it. If we can go to the next slide on lessons so that it makes more sense. Then the other challenge that we also identified in Mbire was the idea of coordination. So you see, there's that disconnect between community structures, government, social protection efforts, as well as those NGO interventions. So you see that sometimes Zonderamambo often operates in parallel to school feeding programs rather than being in synergy with them. So the best idea is now to try to ensure and buttress that coordination platforms between the NGOs, the UN agencies, as well as the governments, and then build such inclusive and multi-level partnerships that center local systems like the Zonderamambo, so as to ensure that there is complementarity rather than duplication or competition between the two. So, for example, in Zimbabwe, there are some society communities and some organizations who are now taking the school feeding programs. They are now using the Zonderamambo to provide rather than providing for households, but can also provide for schools, so that we have school feeding programs, so that a child, when they're at school, also have access to at least 3 hot meals per day, to ensure that food security as well as education are combined, and there's that effective integration. So such an idea, I think, will really work for our societies. Then, of course, we realize that there are also issues around documentation as well as evidence gaps, especially formal documentation of these practices, right? There's need for that community level research and that knowledge translation, because such knowledge is really dying with our elders. So that knowledge really needs to be documented. Really need to understand what it means when someone comes with the root and to repel snakes or even insects. What exists in that root? What is that primary? So we need that scientific evidence to back that knowledge, that indigenous knowledge, because we realize that our ancestors were really they were wise, and they that next level wisdom. So we really need to take that into consideration to ensure that we have that effective knowledge transfer. So in conclusion, I think if we can move to the last slide, really we need to understand and also recognize the importance of indigenous knowledge systems, given how they respect those local systems and how they have the power for long-term resilience is that such knowledge can also be transferred beyond the Zimbabwean borders. And I know and also understand that other countries also have their own effective operations that are also local based. And that being the case, then let's move research, let's move efforts, let's have such engaging dialogues where we can share and even document and collaborate and to ensure that we really serve our children of the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Iggy, for sharing your lessons learned and the challenges that the initiative faces. And now the same question to Joao. Could you please tell us how you think that the experience of UNAS that you have just described can help other organizations or can bring lessons or maybe recommendations, suggestions as to how to go through certain crises?
I think I have two things to say. One of to the part of the people who gonna take the decisions is we realize that on here on UNAS that most of the time the people of the government came and see the favelas and see what happened here and trying to give us an answer for our challenges. So when we have demanded what we need. So I guess is that to the people who the decision makers, we have to say to them, you not give to us the answer. You have only to listen because we have the answers, we have the question, we have the challenge. We know have to respect the knowledge to the territory. So a kind of Iggy says, the knowledge of the territory is so invisible, it's not. I feel in that don't give the right relevance to the knowledge of the territory. So it's the first thing I want to say, and I think that we have to input on the decision makers' mind. The second thing is here in Nunas we treat the territory. We are part of the territory. Most of the people who work here in Nunas, like 90% of the people who work in Nunas today is from the territory or from surrounding areas or the favelas. It's near the Eliopo. But I think we never speak for Eliopo. I think that's the point I want to say to the other NGOs and want to share with the people who is like in this position, like my position here, to sharing the history is we are history telling. We're not telling the history of everyone. We're not giving voice to everyone. That's the point we see in Nunas. That's a wrong way to make. That most time we seeing that we giving voice to the territory where we're from. We give a voice to the people who the people don't listen about, but we don't give it the voice. They already have a voice. They already have our issues, our goals, our challenges, and our things. So we building bridge between the public policies and community knowledge, and we have to break up some walls to see the other people, and to the people who are in territory, see the people who are on the space of decision, but we never give the voice to anyone. We just amplify the voice. I think is that we work more on that here. That's the thing. That's a practice. I think everyone to have that think about amplify the voices, to give the voices for someone. So this is what we're working here on Heliopolis. Science to the children who are in the CCS, our families, science the people who come here to to research about our citizens' rights, to our families in particular. So we have like five five goals uh, in UNAS. One is the autonomy. We have to give autonomy to everyone in every project, in every challenge. Responsibility. We have the responsibility to transform something, so we have the people's lives in our hands, and solidarity. So once we have these things, we have to be a solidarity with the other people. And other two things is this principal goals is everything passed through education. Anyone's gonna change the world if it's not education to that. And the schools and projects have to be the center of all this change. So all this change is have to be leading by the social projects and schools, because we believe in too much in the children. We believe too much in the next generation. We believe that like we have like our Paulo Freire is a good thinker and Brazilian thinker for education and for social transformation. He says we don't gonna change the world, but we're gonna teach someone who gonna do that. So that's what we believe in these 5 H's.
Okay, beautiful, Joao. And this was on the chat, so it is also important that you shared your view or Una's view that it is not like people are voiceless. They were specifically and proactively marginalized by the processes that you described in your presentation. So urban marginalization, the fact that the government didn't provide housing when they needed to, so 60s and 70s, the fact that the government didn't provide childcare when they needed to in the 90s. So these are historical processes. And so the idea would be to amplify what the peoples are already saying. It is not like they don't explain what they need or they don't know what they need. They have already expressed it usually, and we need to listen to them and make sure that that gets to whomever it needs to get. For instance, the local government, the national government, etc. So this is a nice reflection to end the presentations. And now we are going to the Q&A. We had several questions. Luckily, I am going to pose the first one and then I need to go. And Elena will continue leading the Q&A session. So the first one was from Bushra. Sorry if I am mispronouncing your name, from Islamic Relief. This is a question for Iggy, and it says, how can an NGO build on this? So on the initiative or a similar initiative to the one that you presented, Iggy, without disrupting or potentially making the organization more reliant on aid agencies. So I understand how to build on this, replicate this, maybe amplify this without creating a dependency. Thank you.
All right, that is a great question, really. And I see oftentimes NGOs struggle with this. But what I always say is that it's about three things, rather. Number one, respect. Number two, relevance. Number three, resilience, and not replacement. That being in mind, number one, what we need to do is to, first of all, we need to listen. When you engage a community, listen to what they need. Really go there, ask them what can you provide in order to strengthen what already exists, right? What their challenges are, what their strengths are, and what needs to be done. Then number two, build around what exists, right? Don't try to come up with new interventions that are not complementary to what exists. So, for example, instead of trying to bring in new granary systems, already you see this community already thrives on agriculture. So instead, go with, say, solar-powered interventions to ensure that system operates effectively as it stands. Just complement it, so you build around that. Then number 3, I would say it's about co-creating. Co-create with them. It means that you don't lead them, you walk alongside them. You get to understand them and get to see how they operate, how they move, and how you can really come up with solutions, so that in that sense, they get that sense of ownership. They get to respect you because you're also respecting them. Then finally, I also say that it is important to intentionally plan your exit. What I mean is, when an organization leaves, you should live a society resilient rather than broken. So in this sense, make sure that you have an effective exit strategy. So when you exit, it means that the society that you're also engaging should also know that there is going to be a termination that is going to come at the end of this project. So there should be that effective exit. And so it means that throughout the whole program is about sustaining the communities, so that when you leave, they are left resilient. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Iggy. And there is now a question for Joao. I'm gonna read the question we have for you, Joao. Just give me a second. Does the CCA link to the national program Bolsa Família in Brazil, public policy in social protection?
Unfortunately, I have to say no. It's not linked by, but because the CCAs are linked is a municipal thing. It's to the city of São Paulo, as it's a policy of the city of São Paulo. The Bolsa Família programs is a national program from public policies. So we have to consider the children here who are in the Bolsa Família program, but not necessarily every children who are in the CCAs are in this program. But one of the things we dream about is connected them, because the program of Bolsa Família is linked by the schools. So the children don't go to the school, they don't have the access of the Bolsa Família, and the CCAs is like a spontaneous demand, so we can attend everyone in Heliópolis, unless we attend a big number of the children, like per month, more than 100 people. So, but we don't attend every people in Heliópolis. If the CCA was linked by the Bolsa Família, we can expand in this and attend more the people. We have like this justification to do that.
Thanks, Joao. If there are any additional questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. We may have time for 1 or 2 more. Maybe briefly, just a couple of questions from my side. Iggy, you have talked to an extent about how Zundera Mambo has impacted or has enhanced the living standards of these villages that use this system. Are you thinking to research what impact it has had on the protection of children more specifically, as it would be really interesting to read?
Yes, really. So initially I had to focus on food security for children as a yardstick to measure child protection. So yes, I'm going to further also look into other forms of protection to look at how it is holistically a social protection concept. So yeah, I'm still moving towards other key areas of social protection. So of course, I'm going to look at how it builds, for example, how it can build resilience for children when it comes to their health needs. How can it promote children that are, that are dignified children or that understand cultures. So really, yeah, it is a research still in progress, particularly on those other key elements. And yes, I'm going to really build up on that initial presentation.
I think that would make like a very strong case like for further investing in such systems or exporting them, as you were saying earlier. So I think one of the elements that has been unpacked throughout like this annual meeting is gathering the evidence to show that like we are making an impact like with this type of intervention, and I think that would be a really solid contribution. But thanks, Iggy. And Joao, thank you for bringing such a rich perspective and many comments like in the chat, like I've spoken about, like how great how great it is to hear about a bottom-up approach. And I think you have been a refreshing voice because like you have brought a couple of things to the table. It's like it's not about giving voice to the people, is amplifying their voices. It's not about being heard, but breaking like the walls that are impeding people to be heard. Like, is there any other comment or consideration that you would like to leave like for child protection practitioner to foster this type of bottom-up initiatives? So what can bigger NGOs like do to foster this type of initiatives?
I think one thing Iggy says, we think and the same thing here, but here we practice this and to the bottom up with the children. Also in the CCR, the children practice the the development goals for the UN, since they getting into the CCRs and they work monthly at 10 at Soviet with is linked by this these development goals. So I think is that is I can show on my presentation, but this is the most important point. To everything has to pass by education. Science, the children get into the CCRs, and I think that is the point who makes everything change in Heliopolis, because other favelas can do the same, and I think that's the most main point. If the children don't stay in in the places of the grassroots places, they don't gonna learn the rights they have, and they don't gonna grow and turn into adults who gonna be fight for this right. So I think is that that's the main point I want to share. We can construct we can build the bridges, we can break the walls, but if we don't have education in this process, the things is not be continuous, you know. So I think that's one of we have like these 5 goals, and the most important to me is like everything passed through education. So science, the data we collect on the observatories, science, the children who eat on the places on the CCRs, science, the people who are here working the projects and bureaucratic stuff for the government. Everything have to pass to education, and education is not only to the form of education like a professor doing. but education who help the children and let they think for ourselves. I
Yeah.
hope this is the main point of everything.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. It's not just about like formal education. It's about like all of like those items which are precious to child protection in humanitarian action, such as amplifying children voices, accountability to children, and all of those elements. Well, with this, I want to thank Joao and Iggy for their amazing presentations and for their time and commitment like to the Alliance annual meeting. The same goes for Mara, who has helped facilitating these sessions, and Rebecca for participating at the back there from UNAS. Thank you. I invite you all to continue the conversation in our community of practice, like on this topic. I've posted like the links like in the chat right now, but also please like don't forget there is a mini closing right now starting at the top of the hour with Tani Mansourian, the director of the Alliance, Ron Powell from the director, if I'm correct, from the Global Child Protection Area of Responsibility, and Camilla, maybe, I don't know, and the Alliance annual meeting also, and Camilla Jones, obviously, the co-director of the Alliance.
I'll just quickly share that it's not a mini closing. It's actually now going to be a session focusing on humanitarian reset discussion.
Okay,
so if people want to stay on for that, we'll have a chance to speak to Ron about some of the latest developments in the humanitarian reset. So we had a little bit of a change of topic, but thank you for announcing it, Elena. Thanks all.
No, that's absolutely fine, and great. Thanks, Camilla, for jumping in. Yeah, Camilla will be there as well. So a great session to attend, and there is still tomorrow to go. So happy if you could all jump in and chip in into those activities. Thanks again, Joao, Iggy, Rebecca, Amara, and everyone. Take care.